in the thunderstorms. But we made it. Oh well, it's just life.
Letter from the city.
All right, Heather, are we good to go? Oh,
She's not.
Yes.
okay, I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Tompkins County Industrial Development Agency for September 14th, 2022. Welcome, everybody. It's my understanding we will not have a meeting of the Development Corporation. Is that correct? Okay. So first item is privilege of the floor. I have one blue card, and I believe there is an item to read into the record. Why don't you go ahead, Heather, and read that comment into the record, and then we'll have our speaker.
Okay. Russ, can you hear us out there? Great. Okay. This is an email to the TCIDA and IAED board members from Deirdre and Todd.
Hold on. You need to speak into your microphone.
Sorry. I'm out of practice.
Yes.
Okay, I'll start over. This is an email to the TCIDA and the IAED board members from Deirdre and Todd Kurzweil regarding further movement on developer accountability dated Tuesday, September 13th. Once again, thank you for updating your system to recognize the possible impacts of economic development on tenants at the same address of a project. As communicated by Heather, she's cut what I said in an email. Deirdre, in the environmental review section of the application, page 9, we added the following language. Please describe any short-term construction impacts or other long-term impacts to existing or adjacent businesses / tenants, as well as any mitigations that were identified as part of the environmental review and or permitting process. Heather. We believe it is important that the City of Ithaca also formally act in a similar fashion, and we request that you encourage the city to follow your lead. While we have been engaged with the city on this topic for nearly 2 years, due to recent changes in staff and despite efforts by Tom Knipe to move it forward, it hasn't made it to the top of the priority list yet. If there is anything at all you can do to help them in that process, having gone through it yourself, we would be most appreciative. There is still much that will be happening in the next year or so all around us, and we have no reason to believe that we won't be damaged further in the future. Tenants, both residential and retail, must be protected during the planning, approval, and monitoring of projects because sometimes landlords don't. Please distribute to at least all member of your executive boards. Thank you. Sunny Days of Ithaca, Uncle Toddy's Flea Market by Sunny Days.
Thank you, Heather. And we have a comment from Teresa Alt. Do you want to come to the microphone?
Is this on?
Does appear to be.
Okay. I'm Teresa Alt of 206 Eddy Street, City of Ithaca. I have often questioned whether granting tax abatements within the CTAP density area is useful policy, but I can see no excuse for granting an abatement outside the CTAP area unless your purpose is always to use property taxes to transfer more and more money from those of modest income to the owners of big businesses. The developers of Cliff Street Retreat tout all sorts of supposed community benefits. They write of adaptive reuse and cite the experience of Green Star. I don't recall any adaptive reuse cited at the time of the Green Star application. They tell of $50,000 for affordable housing, but $50,000 won't build a single unit. It depends on other government funding to be incentivized. They boast of 6 jobs at an average $16.61 an hour. Such a job, if full-time, will enable the worker to afford $830.50 monthly rent. Is that what those 6 apartments in the complex will rent for? I don't recall seeing the rents. City approval of the PUD does not mean this is wonderful. It just means this isn't harmful. What I see in the numbers is a total of about $1 million in local property and sales taxes foregone by city, county, and school district together. This should not be a giveaway. Now, it could be viewed as a loan, one more loan to the developer, and then it should be repaid above and beyond the usual taxes, just as if it came from a bank or other investors. Or it could be viewed as the local governments owning about 1/10 of the property. In that case, they should be paid about 1/10 of the profits in perpetuity. No, do the simple thing. Don't grant the abatement.
Thank you. Are there any additions to the agenda? Any changes? Seeing none, I'd proceed to our item 4, business, and our first item is Cliff Street Retreat. Heather, would you like to introduce this topic?
Sure. Thank you, Rich. You have before you an application. I'm going to ask the development team that's speaking to come up to the table. I'll let them introduce themselves and give a brief overview of the project. This project is outside of the city's CTAP boundary. The IDA's standard policy does indicate that a retail commercial project can come to the IDA for incentives if the home municipality has provided a letter of endorsement, which you'll find in your packet. The City of Ithaca has provided that endorsement. We looked at it in terms of a CTAP project. That's generally the City of Ithaca's downtown investment policy that will allow for a 10-year incentive based on financial need. So all of the construction documents, the pro formas, all of that have been submitted for review. Those are confidential documents. And you will find in your packet on page 26, the proposed property tax incentive, sales tax, mortgage recording tax incentive that comes along with the CTAP. So I will turn it over. I will also say this, so because it is outside of the CTAP, it does deviate from the IDA standard policy. And so when a project deviates from the standard policy, we would just need to notify taxing jurisdictions that the IDA is contemplating delivering an incentive. So that will happen. I'm going to ask the development team to join us at the table.
While they do that, I just need to note that I've got a conflict here, so I will not take part in the
Yes, come on
discussion or
up.
abstain.
Use the seats up here. Wow. An old style phone. If you can pull the microphones forward so you can be recorded that way. And welcome, Link, I know you, but if you could each introduce yourselves and make a brief statement about your proposal.
Okay, my name is Lincoln Morse, and I'm a managing partner of the Cliff Street Retreat. Sitting next to me is Brian Paulson, the managing partner for Discover Ithaca. On his left is Mike Panko, managing partner in Cliff Street Retreat. And sitting over in the gallery is Colin Fortier, who is from Hale Companies. He's their real estate development and works with Steve Hale, managing partner, Cliff Street Retreat.
Thank you.
So thank you for hearing us today. The Cliff Street Retreat has been in process now for 2 years. It was tied to the relocation of the Encodema manufacturing facility. And one of the deals for relocating Encodema was to find a creative and community benefit and neighborhood benefit for the existing facility. It is a challenging adaptive reuse. We hope that all of the elements that we've engaged. There's boutique retail, 6 units. There are 6 to 8 apartments. There are 6 to 8 hotel rooms. There's a bar, restaurant, and roughly 3,500 square feet of commercial professional space. We checked a lot of boxes. And one of the things we found going through municipal approvals with the Cliff Street Retreat is the neighborhood was sensitive to density. They did not want us to build 140 apartment units. They wanted us to try to stay as small and local impact. They did want the building to look a lot better than it does right now. And I think if you look at your packets, you'll see the kind of the initial renderings, which we're improving upon as we speak. We're upgrading finishes, thermal performance, new glazing, all new air source heat pumps. There's still a good green space around the building. We've had a lot of positive and engaged with all of our neighbors on Cliff Street, and they support the project. We are looking, because of our big tenant, which is Discover Ithaca, which we call the bikes, hikes, and boats and hotel rooms, as being our anchor tenant. And Brian will speak to that later. But we believe this is a strong economic engine for the city of Ithaca and enhancing the visitor experience. We believe that all the amenities and uses for the building support that. And we were very conservative in our job projections, but we have when the boutique retail kicks in and the operator signs agreements with the expansion, we see probably doubling those jobs, but we want to be conservative, and we've got a long haul ahead. As you know, the construction world is still in upheaval right now, but we want to get building here in the next 3 months. So I'm going to turn this over to my partner, Mike Pankow, and he's going to talk about the trades and the working and the construction for the project.
Okay.
Thank you, Link. So once again, my name is Mike Pankow, and that is very important as far as Link said, the adaptive reuse of the building, trying to engage everything that we could as far as reusing things in the building, but also upgrading everything from the heating and ventilating systems, using air source heat pumps, LED lighting, the glazing, anything energy efficient that could be put into the building itself, but also adapting the building to transform it into something that is going to be very visibly pleasing to everybody in the community itself. From the construction aspect, also utilizing as much construction labor as we can from the local areas. Within companies, the roofing aspect, Steve Hale, one of the partners, has a local construction company. Myself, a local construction company that does employ local labor to be able to use on the project itself. So again, we just feel that it is very, very important and a very decent project to be able to put forth. Construction, as everybody knows, that is around the trades, is not simple these days. Construction costs are skyrocketing and very, very difficult to try to keep in the light. But we feel once again that this is a very good project and good for the community, good for everything around the city of Ithaca to be able to enhance the experience.
Thank you. I guess I'd like, Heather, go ahead.
So what we would be looking for today is comments, acceptance of the application as complete, and moving this on to a public hearing.
Right. Okay. Well, let's open it up to any questions or comments. I guess seeing no hands yet, I'd have one. Are you within the current footprint of the building, or are you building out from there?
During municipal approvals, we have a site to the north of the parking lot, and we will be building a single building with 4 apartments in it. 2 of those apartments may lend themselves to the hotel space and 2 apartments.
So is that this right here?
It is north of that facade going up the hill, yes.
Oh, so there'll be another building?
There'll be another small building there. And it will be in keeping to create a campus. It'll be that modern timber. So it looks like a home in the neighborhood.
Okay. Anybody else have questions? Shauna?
Yeah, I just want to make sure I have this right. So how many individual owners are there going to be for this project? 3
How many partners?
partners?
There is one partner who had a family emergency, Rich Gianforte, who is the owner of Flower City Glass, which also is a local contract, but based originally out of Rochester. He couldn't be here today.
Okay.
And the other partner is, the other partner is Dan Vinoy. He couldn't be here because he lives in Alaska. So there's 5 partners of
Okay.
the building itself.
And then the 3 of you? Or who, name all of the partners for me. Okay.
Lincoln Morse,
1,
Mike
2,
Panko, Steve
3,
Hale.
and then the other 2 that aren't
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
Okay. So I guess my other question is, assuming these renovations take place, you're going to be using your construction company to do the construction? Is that correct?
Well, my company does electric work, so
Okay.
we would be doing the electric work.
Okay.
Steve Hale owns a roofing company.
Okay.
His company would be doing the roofing construction.
Okay.
Flower City Glass, they would be interested in doing all of the glazing on the outside. Now, the other aspect is we do have HVAC and plumbing that need to be put in. So we are working on construction documents at current to be able to try to make sure that we get comparative numbers. That being said, we are interested to try to get prices from other competitive people as well. Because honestly, from a business standpoint, if somebody else can do it cheaper than I can, go ahead, have at it. So we are going to be interested in that as well. So.
Okay. And then the last question I have is, what are the rents for your apartments going to be?
So right now, the larger timber lofts, we believe are going to be between 2,200, Monk, and correct me, 2,200 and 2,500 a month. And these are just under 1,100 square feet. They are large apartments.
No, that was for the top apartments.
Oh, for the penthouses? Okay. So I should let you speak to, Monk did the last assembly of the pro forma, so I'm going to let him talk to that. And these were based on comparables for the area.
So I believe, and Colin, do me a favor, shake your head, please. I think our low base apartment rate was a 1,700 or 1,800? Okay. So yeah, we started with the low base apartment rate. It's somewhere between 1,700 and 1,800, I do believe, for the smaller apartments.
Okay.
And there are penthouses that are going to be there as well. The penthouses obviously will be a little bit larger as far as rent rolls.
Okay. And those would be at 2,200 to 2,500?
Maybe 25 to 27?
On the thousand,
Yeah,
27 to 32.
okay.
And these are just under 2,000 square feet, the
Yeah, they're
penthouses.
Large units.
Would you consider that luxury housing?
I'll answer the question this way. They won't have a private entrance. They'll have a public entrance. There is an elevator in the building because of access requirements for both commercial space. So yeah, they'll have to walk across the parking lot, but it is, we found there was and the reason for the penthouses, we found structural steel in the building that could support a second floor. And we considered that it was time to capitalize on that now. And there is a demand for downsizers that can't move into a 1,500 square foot because of family size. And so we built 4 units, designed it in that would be larger.
Thank you.
Okay. Mike?
I just wanted to ask you about the hotel aspect of this. I mean, I get the housing part. How do you envision, I kind of have read through what you envision for the hotel. How is it different, I guess, than just another hotel? If somebody were to ask me that.
It's a great question, and I may have Brian follow up on this, is we call ourselves, or Discover Ithaca Bikes, Hikes, and Boats. We offer an amenity package within our partnership group. We will have a waterfront footprint. And so what we're trying to do is put together a package that is for the active family that's coming here to kayak, canoe, do gorge trails, access Cayuga Lake, and in the off season, access some of the wineries, everything that's an active lifestyle. It's not business. It was the retreat name came from the invitation to bring family. And so the apartments are bigger. They have kitchens, they have bathrooms, they have laundries. we want to entice our guests, our visitor experience to come and stay for a week, come and stay for 2 weeks. It's not a normal hotel room. It would be more extended stay look, but it is someone really looking to come and spend time in Ithaca, not just for 1 or 2 nights. It's not a commercial hotel. It's a resort hotel, very unique to what Ithaca has to offer.
The reason I ask is because I had a discussion with Heather like years ago that said I didn't think the IDA really should kind of keep investing in hotels. It seemed like we had kind of got on a path of doing that. But it does sound like that's a unique kind of thing. So I thank you for marketing yourself that way. I mean, I believe in marketing, and I'm thankful for your explanation of it, actually.
And I want to add one other item, and Brian can elaborate. We have our Duffy electric dinner boats. And when we originally put together the package for Duffy being here, it was to support our own local food production. And then Brian came up with a strategy that any restaurant in Ithaca can cater a Duffy. And that means CTB, which we have done. We've done actually Sal's Pizza and Wings. I don't think there's a restaurant that hasn't put food on a Duffy. And we believe that supports every restaurant and isn't isolating to one group. We want to create an economic engine that benefits everybody.
Thank you.
Heather.
When I received the application, I know there's been some talk in the tourism industry about hotel rooms and whether we've reached the max and the hotels that we need here. And so I did reach out to some of the downtown hoteliers and asked how they felt about this project, gave a small overview of the project, and they overwhelmingly indicated that, you know, small, boutique-y with this connection to the waterfront and active lifestyle activities, they did not see as competition for the hotels downtown, and were overwhelmingly supportive of this as an addition to the tourism offerings here.
Okay. Todd?
When you talk about local labor, being a local workforce, I don't follow it there, because I know, Mike, your guys, most of you guys live Owego, outside of Owego. You know, there's nobody that's in Tompkins County or a county that's touching Tompkins County. And I know with the glass company, they're out of Rochester, their offices are Rochester and Syracuse. So how are you classifying them as a local workforce with our IDA requirements?
So I'll just say a few comments and then I'll let Mike go. So Rich Gianforti, that owns Flower City Glass, recently hired staff to expand and have a glass shop locally in Ithaca, and actually has been feeding a lot of local projects, some of mine, for glazing, showers, small boutique retail. And we're actually trying to find where we're going to put his assembly plant for larger projects. So he has a pretty big footprint here and work. The Mike Panko, I'll let him speak to that. Steve Hale and I have been working on projects together for the last 10 years. And I don't know what local labor he still has here, but he always has 2 or 3 guys that are here and based. All of these companies are expanding in Ithaca as part of a development group called Strategic Elements Real Estate Development. That is going to put their footprint here stronger, and they're gonna actually invest in office space and expanding in Ithaca.
Office space is one thing, but the manpower, you got manpower in the area?
And we do have employees that do live in Tompkins County. We have employees that live in various counties throughout New York State.
I looked up, when I saw the names involved, I looked up to see, you know, what I could find on the contractors. I'm curious. It's my world. And I was surprised I didn't see anybody in Tompkins County. Interesting.
I'm sorry, anybody?
Owego. I saw workers in Owego. I didn't see anybody closer than Owego to Tompkins County, or a county touching Tompkins County.
I'm just lost as far as the information that you're pulling as far as where the manpower is coming from. So I know that the people that we employ, we do have people that live in Broome County. They live in Owego. They do live in surrounding counties. We've got guys that live in Horseheads, a few guys that do live here in Ithaca. We've got guys that live way up north above Watertown, but we do employ people that are within Tompkins County, along with the surrounding counties of Tompkins County. So. And that's for ourselves. And I know Hill Roofing has the same thing. They do have employees that do reside within Tompkins County, but also in the surrounding counties surrounding.
I know Chemung touches us, yep.
Correct, correct.
Mr. Hale, it looks like you'd like to add something.
So, yeah, I'd like to add to that. I think the answer to your question is, Monk answered it earlier, so we're going to get pricing for the roof from other contractors in Ithaca. There's a couple of roofing contractors in Ithaca. And like I told my partners, if their price is better than mine, they're doing the job because it's local and they're cheaper. And so with that being said, the same thing with Monk. We're going to try to utilize as much locality as we can. A lot of my guys come from Tompkins County. A lot of them come from Chemung County. A lot of them come from Steuben County, but they are local people that stay here and generate tax income for Ithaca. And I think what the guys, I mean, you guys did a great job with what you presented. I'd like to add that, you know, this kind woman talked about tax breaks. Well, when these people come in, they're going to be going to your city and spending money in your restaurants, your bars, and generating sales tax. And I think that, you know, it's a win for everybody, especially improving that property. But as far as it goes with local contractors, I'm with you. We're going to do as much as we can to get a local contractor, even if the price is close. And like Mug says, he has some people from Tompkins, Chemung, Steuben. Not everybody, I'll be honest with you, not everybody that if I was going to do this job is from here, but there's a few, and we do the best we can.
Thank you.
Hey, Heather, did you have a comment?
I had the entire team in my office. We spent some time going through the application and all of the requirements at the IDA. They are aware of the IDA's local construction labor policy, which does require 75% local labor. They are familiar with the opportunities for waivers and how those waivers work. They're also familiar with the policy in that they have to show proof of soliciting bids from local contractors as well. So there were definitely back and forth and discussions around those points.
It just seems kind of, I've never seen a situation like this where, you know, where you got the owners or actually the contractors too doing their own work. So it just makes me, you know, where's the bidding process? You know, that's what it just, where's the checks and balance there, especially when you're applying for tax abatements.
We may be contractors, but we're also business people.
Yep.
So in the light of protecting all of the partners, as far as the property is concerned, we are looking in the light of not necessarily our business, but our business, if you look at it in that sense. So again, we realize from a contractor standpoint, we're not going to be low bid on every single job. If somebody comes in and they can give us a comprehensive package that meets the criteria of what exactly it needs to do, and they can do it cheaper than we potentially can do it, I have no issue with hiring somebody else. So, and that's the way that we all feel as partners. What's the best for the project and best for the community?
I'm saying I'd rather have somebody else do the roof. I don't want to push away work, but I really don't. I have enough work.
I'd like to also add, and I know, Todd, you're going through this, there is not a labor pool out there. We used to be able to pull in 100 employees for interviews. We can pull in 2 and they won't even show up or work the next day. There is such a massive demand for the trades. And I don't know what happened, but you know, you can make a good living in the trades. The next generation doesn't want to do it. And so it's challenging to stay in business and do this, but we have to, you know, we're looking to entice interns where we want to inspire, but if you go after an intern or local, we'll hire local. Gosh, if we could just get a pool that wanted to work.
I guess I have a follow-up question. Do you feel comfortable that you can satisfy our policy on local labor, either through waivers or finding the people? Okay. And Heather, you feel comfortable with the reporting on it?
with all applicants, I go over the rules, the regulations, in particular with our construction labor policy. Everyone who's come in this year has had lots of questions and lots of follow-up questions. And I've made it very clear that it is a requirement. They're signing and certifying the application that they are going to comply with the IDA's policies.
Okay. All right.
One more question. When
Sure.
Mrs. Alt was talking about outside the CTAP, and I think Heather mentioned it, because I haven't been on this that long, as far as the history behind it, we've have precedents of doing this in the past with.
We do. And I went back and looked at the letter on page 6 of our packet from the city where they say that it's not in the CTAP. But they say the city's approval of the 407 Cliff Street PUD serves as city endorsement of the Cliff Street Retreat project for the purpose of the TCIDA to consider their application for incentives. And personally, that was important. I saw that they're saying, yes, the city wants to do this. But if do you have further question?
I wonder if, I don't know if Russell's on there.
Yep.
Russ, how do you feel about?
And I want to apologize to the board and the team for not being there personally. I'm fully vaccinated, but was exposed. So out of an abundance of caution, I decided it would be best that I would not attend. So that's why I'm not there in person. Can you repeat the question just so I mean, if there's a deviation from a policy,
Yeah.
We would have to follow the deviation processes that Heather noted, which is notifying the taxing jurisdictions.
Yeah, more particularly, Russ, I think the question is that the city has a defined boundary, the CTAP, and it's graphic. This is outside of that space. So it's up on West Hill. And the city has approved the project as from its planning department, but also sent a letter to us saying they approve it for consideration for incentives, even though it's outside of the CTAP. And Todd, I don't want to ask you a question for you, but I think it was, is that a problem?
No. No. I mean, they'll have to go through the seeker process. It sounds like they're building on a new improvement on excuse my geography, if I'm wrong, geography, that it's on the north end. They'll have to go through the seeker process. So this is, if the board decides to move forward with the public hearing and accepting the application, there's still a little bit of work to do.
Seeker's been completed. I have the seeker documents, they were designated a planned unit development by the City of Ithaca's Planning and Development Board. So that has been done. I wanted to also add in the TCIDA's, I want to call it the MOU, the UTEP, the Uniform Tax Exemption Policy, which is sort of the guiding document for the IDA. It's on the IDA's website as a policy. It does list that the IDA will deliver incentives to retail commercial projects if the home municipality sends an endorsement. But then when you go further into the policy, it doesn't say what property tax incentive type or term would be provided to those retail commercial projects. And really the only other place that the IDA does retail commercial is in the CTAP. So I just used the same CTAP incentive levels, even though it does deviate from the existing policy. I recognize that.
Thank you.
Okay. John.
On page 3 of the application, there's this background of the various different contractors and partners that are involved in this project. And here it says Mike Panko and his wife Kelly are owners of a woman-owned electrical construction company. Are you a certified WBE in New York State?
We have the application put into New York State. We are not certified as of yet.
Okay, but I mean, you had previously been a certified WBE, is that correct? For
Yes, we
Panko
have.
Electric had, and there were some issues with that, as I understand it?
You could say there was an issue, yes.
And I mean, have you rectified those issues? I mean, has the ownership structure changed since that happened?
The ownership has changed. So the issue was that to be frank, my mother did not sign a contract and therefore they said that she was not in control of the company. So at any rate, so yeah, the issues have been resolved. It is still a woman-owned business, but not certified by New York State. The ownership has changed from my mother, Barbara Panko, to my wife, Kelly Panko.
And she exerts control of the business on a regular basis. She visits job sites. She's a licensed electrician.
She is not a licensed electrician, but you do not need to be a licensed electrician to be a contractor in New York State. In the city of Ithaca, you do, but not in New York State.
And she visits job sites regularly. She comes into the office. She lives in the area. I mean, there were a number of complaints in that document that I'd seen.
Nope, she does visit job sites. She does all the hiring and firing. She could fire me. So, but yeah, she does exert every aspect of what needs to be done from a construction standpoint.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Are we, Shauna?
Sorry, I just have one more. On page 5, where it talks about the building size, existing is 25,297 and then proposed 17,788. Is that adding to the 25,000?
So there's a steel structure existing, an envelope. Within that envelope, we are building timber loft apartments, which is adding a floor level, which adds additional square feet. But it is not, except for the penthouses that is over, what is it, about 20% of the building. It's all within the footprint of the building.
Okay. So I guess my question is, are you netting 17,000 additional square feet?
The
from this
total,
project?
and I may revert back to Colin over there, the total square footage based on the pro forma, Colin, so that I get this right.
43,085 square feet.
Okay.
17,000 is in
Okay.
addition to either by expanding the interior footprint with the lofts, but also it incorporates the separate building.
Okay, so the
cottage.
proposed is the addition of square footage.
That's
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anything further?
Only other thing I saw this, so you said going to be 5 jobs. You're looking at 3 the first year, then 1 the following, 1 the
The
following.
ones that we're comfortable with were put together by Brian, who is with Discover Ithaca. We know that the hospitality element will need minimalistically those 5 jobs to even open the door. This doesn't include the retail stores that are there because we don't have leases for them yet, so we can't project. But we're assuming that you'll probably produce a job for each one of the retails. And if depending on how we handle the hospitality maintenance, because it is a locally managed hotel company, then we believe that the 5 is pretty conservative. It may be doubled minimalistically, but we didn't want to overpromise. We have to have tenancy before we can say what the retail looks like, what the commercial space looks like. We have a tenant with Discover Ithaca, so their data is hard.
And we're talking, I saw wages or wages about $16 an hour or something.
Yeah, so and a lot of this was based on our other companies that Brian has. Brian, you employed 9 people with Paddle Ithaca and Duffy Electric. So if you translate those, there's 9 that will be run out of Cliff Street. That'll become the holding base for the other the hospitality companies. So
Thank you.
just trying to be conservative and.
Thank you.
Okay.
Rich, I'm sorry, I have one more question.
Sure.
So we continue to receive concerns from people that live on the west end about traffic, specifically right at the Octopus there. And I can imagine a project like this, while it's not going to bring a ton more traffic, it certainly could add to the congestion in that area. What is this project willing to do to help with the congestion of that area?
We actually hired SRF to do a preliminary study, and it doesn't even meet the state requirements for expansion. If you look at Encodema with their tractor trailer and their shift changes, we fell under the demand traffic that was already in place. There is traffic congestion on Route 96. It is not caused by the Cliff Street retreat. It is caused by a very robust, wonderful place to live. And there's a lot of people going north to Ulysses, Trumansburg, but we're not, if anything, what SRF said, no more tractor trailers, no massive shift changes where 25 cars are leaving all at once. It's a really slow migrating traffic pattern. And so they considered almost a mitigation.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Are we ready to vote to send it to a public hearing? All right, I'll call the roll, or actually, we need a motion and second. Mike moves. Do I have a second? Faith seconds. All right. Any further comment? Shauna?
No.
Mike?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Jeff?
I'll abstain.
Faith?
Yes.
Todd?
No.
And I'll vote yes. I believe that's one abstention, 2 noes, and 4 yeses. Is that the right count? Okay. All right. So we'll get a public hearing scheduled. I know we'll be working on that, and we'll move from there. So thank you for coming in and talking about your project.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
You're welcome.
Start something down on the waterfront and then start something else.
Okay, our next item is the 2021 IDA Project Jobs Report, which is in your packet, I believe. Towards the back.
It is. I also brought printed copies that everyone should have of the whole job chart. This is what goes into our Paris reporting that happened in March. You saw it in our audit, so this is not really new. What is new is just based on our recapture policy. The IDA's policy does indicate that the IDA should review any projects that have not met job creation requirements. So I have attached the memo with those that have not, and some reasoning behind those based on my discussions and my information from those companies. And what I would ask the IDA, I mean, I'm happy to answer questions. I've made a recommendation based on the information that there's no reason to terminate or claw back any incentives at this point. I'd like to take questions if there are any on any of the projects. And at the end, I would ask that the IDA make a determination.
Okay. I would certainly speak to this issue, but I'd open it up to the floor for the members first. Do you want a couple minutes to look at the report? Yes? Or John?
I just have a question. So I'm sorry, never mind. I answered my own question.
Okay. Let's take a minute and look at this. Just
So Rich, can we ask a question?
let's jump in. Jeff, do you have a question?
So what is Cascade Plaza? Like a large number of employments? I'm not familiar with it.
That is the Hilton Garden Inn project. So, you know, part of the building houses Cornell. There's a couple of other companies, and then the retail on the ground floor, as well as the hotel make up the employment. This one was a 20-year pilot incentive. And at the time when that project was built, the real benefit for downtown, I think this was the first downtown project the IDA delivered an incentive to was that Cornell was going to move a significant number of employees down the hill. And in subsequent years, it was brought to my attention that the projections were probably a little bit higher than what they had actually anticipated. So this does show up almost every single year on the job chart because the projected jobs to begin with were probably a little bit high. And that happens for a number of these projects because for many years, this goes back before my time, the job chart asked for how many jobs. But when you report to the state, you have to report on full-time equivalent jobs. But the application wasn't asking for full-time equivalent jobs. So an applicant might say, I'm going to have 300 jobs, but then when they got the annual report and had to calculate full-time equivalents, and there's a definition and how you calculate it, the actual full-time equivalent jobs would be less. So you'll see that in the write-up for Dairy One, a couple of other ones in there.
Yeah, I guess I'd jump in with my comment, which is it's really hard to examine this right now because we're still recovering from the pandemic. And as we just heard from our guests a few minutes ago, the job market is not at all stable, that it's so hard to find people to hire and particularly in specific trades or, employment skills, that I would have a hard time blaming any of these businesses for not being able to meet job projections they made from before the pandemic and before our job market changed so radically. Not to say that, some of these numbers jump out at you, but I don't know, overall, it does seem like there's 409.9 net jobs gained, but there's tons of fluctuation. And particularly with some of our high tech companies that we've assisted, I would imagine they're really struggling to find the qualified help. No, but I'd welcome any comment any of the other members have on this.
I would just add, in talking to the hotels, their job numbers are not pre-pandemic. Their revenues are not pre-pandemic. The benefit that the IDA provided was not just about providing jobs, but that community vitality and supporting the tourism industry. Those hotels are really going to be critical to the downtown conference center as it opens in the next couple of years. So, we all recognize that, the job numbers have not come back in the hotels. With the manufacturers and the high-tech companies, the job numbers are down a little bit from last year, what we saw last year. And there's been a little bit of a lag in terms of impacts, particularly with supply chain impacts as a result of COVID. So my guess is that we're going to see this for the next couple of years.
Yeah. What is 209 to 215 Dryden Associates?
That is the Brizano Center, the Cornell MBA program, where we provided a structured real estate deal to a private developer that built the building, is leasing it to Cornell. If Cornell owned it and we're having the uses in it that are in it today, it would not be on the tax rolls. So this was a deal that provided certainty for the developer and kept it on the tax roll for a period of 50 years.
Donna.
I guess I have a question in regards to whenever we look at net jobs gained, are we looking for them to have completed net jobs gained at the end of the exemption period?
They project jobs over the first 3 years of operation. So for some of these, it's been more than 3 years. They may have peaked, they may have come down. Things do tend to shift a little bit from one year to the next. So I did not include any projects in here that are under construction or might be in the first year of operation.
Can't wait to see what you get when you get Knickerbocker's numbers. It's going to be, it sounds like they're moving the other line to Ithaca too. From the,
Yeah. And I have heard from Richard at Knickerbocker. He's doing much more renovation than he had anticipated. And I've been out to the building and it really looks phenomenal. Like if an empty box of a building could look phenomenal, this does. The new electric, the HVAC, the lighting. It's really very impressive.
They pave it so you don't lose your car in a pothole on the way in.
That's coming. I taught my daughter how to drive over there.
It's bad.
Very slowly.
Any further comment?
is there any idea how to track? Can we track like wages for some of these jobs? Like, I'm just curious, like when we see.
On the right line.
There's a payroll?
Yeah, second, on the far side.
We do
Oh, I didn't
ask
see that.
for payroll. We do calculate an average wage. And you'll see for those that are more retail commercial in nature, the average wage is lower than if you just looked at the manufacturing and the high-tech companies, the average wage is.
You're saying we're not seeing the part-time positions here, or we are?
We would be seeing, it's full-time equivalents. We ask for total payroll.
Okay, thank you. I was just curious if that were.
I guess would it make sense for us, for some of these exemption periods that are coming to a close, even exemption periods that are like 2 or 3 years out, would it make sense to send them just an updated letter recalling their commitment and then what the actual recapture policy would be? I'm just wondering, I would hate for, the time period to come. 2024 is literally pretty much right around the corner. And, for them either to have forgotten or to not be aware due to the fact that they probably had different administrators and turnover amongst the staff that might have signed the initial contract.
It doesn't hurt to. What I do is for anyone that is under on their job numbers, I will either call or make an appointment to go out and visit them. Part of what we do at IAED is we spend a lot of time meeting with manufacturers, high-tech companies. So those are really my priority, and I will go out and talk to them, see if there's red flags. A lot of times you'll learn if, they're thinking about moving out or if they're looking at an expansion. But what I do is I at least call everybody that's on the list and I say, here's your incentive, here's what you pledged, here's what your job numbers are, you are under what you projected, I give them the whole spiel and I'm very upfront about that. And, that's where my write-up comes from, is not me guessing what's going on, but them actually telling me what's going on.
Thank you.
John?
Heather, do we have a sense, I assume your office probably has these numbers at your fingertips of just what the unemployment picture looks like locally. I think, to the earlier points we heard, it seems like it's hard to find people. And even if, Therm was trying like mad to hire to make up those, 45 jobs they've lost, they might not even be able to find them. But I don't know what that really looks like out there.
The unemployment rate is very low. And there is, based anecdotally on lots of conversations, just a mismatch between skills and job openings. In terms of the manufacturers, they have been saying this for 5 years, 7 years. They just can't find anyone to even apply. What we have done is we started a direct to work program that we piloted this past summer, where we engaged we got 11 applicants, seniors graduating from high school, really without a plan. Our goal was to get 12. We got 11 through lots of social media advertising, and we put them through a 27 module, 1 hour module online manufacturing training certificate program. And then our goal is to match those young people with manufacturers. So we sent out a letter to 8 manufacturers. 7 of them responded within 24 hours. We asked, are you interested in this program? Would you guarantee an interview? Within 24 hours, 7 responded, absolutely. As the students started to move through the program this summer, Daniel Zabo, who's my workforce innovation director at IAED, and I went out and met with all 7 manufacturers. We spent 2 or 3 hours with each of them, really understanding what the jobs are, what the job duties, what the environment is like on the manufacturing floor, so that we could sort of match the young people with their interest and their energy level with the different employers. And that's what we're doing right now. I know this is very long-winded, but my point was really when we went out and met with Therm and Precision Filters and Seaboard and Borg Warner, they said, you have 11 participants. I want to interview all of them. And if I could interview all of them, if they were eligible, I would hire them all today. There's definitely need. What we're going to do is build out this training program, and our hopes is to do this around the construction trades and the healthcare industry as well, so that we can engage partners in providing all of the wraparound services as well as the training to get people into those entry-level positions, particularly in manufacturing and other trades where you can earn a decent living over time. So I know, in talking to Bob Sproul at Therm, he can't hire fast enough. He can't find. One of the issues is one of the partners' challenge is no longer doing the work and the supports for people with barriers to employment opportunities. And so, that's something that we've identified as it's sort of missing, and we need to find other partners that can pick that up and make sure that everyone who wants a job can find a job doing something that's meaningful and pays a living wage.
Thank you. Yeah, it was really disappointing to hear that Mosaic didn't pick up the banner on that one. And I think, just as a comment in general, I think that as an IDA, right, it's supposed to be our mission to create jobs, and that is something that we do put a lot of focus on. I think that a big problem that we have here specifically is that there's no place to live if you are working in a lot of these jobs. If you're in one of these, 20-ish, $22, $25 an hour jobs, your affordable rents are, well below what exists as an opportunity to rent in this community. So I think, that just reinforces the need for us to continue to do projects like Art House and, the other, there's a long list of upcoming affordable projects, Asteri, Carpenter Park, et cetera. And so, I would like to see us continue that focus and if anything, grow it so that there's people to fill all these wonderful jobs that these employers would create. And I think that would benefit everyone all the way around.
Yeah, I will say that, jobs is something you can quantify. The state comptroller's office looks at all the Paris, the state reporting forms and does a report every year. And it's basically jobs because it's easy to quantify. In the economic development world, that's the number one thing that everyone looks at. The IDA State Association has really been working hard to engage the state in discussion around all the other benefits that come from delivering an incentive to not just a manufacturer, but a downtown project. Housing, because there's housing need. We've done here a lot of work around energy efficiency and renewable energy that you can't quantify that as much and as easily as jobs. And so, the state still does really hang their hat on, is everyone creating jobs?
And
so that's why we're looking at them.
Yeah, no, and we do have to put it in the context of what you just said, and including local labor during construction, making sure the jobs are here rather than from somewhere else, and economic vibrancy, that there's activity in your downtown, not just, buildings, but stuff happening, which makes such a difference. And I'd also add tax base. You know, there's a lot of tax base here, which going through budget season, we are heavily reliant upon. You know, this is a interesting story right now. And in fact, I talked about Sproul this weekend and I heard exactly the same thing, that if there were qualified people out there, he would be hiring them in a moment. And I've heard it. In fact, I was doing a jail tour over in Shenango County today, and I rode over with our jail administrator who said the biggest challenge he has is finding people that want to work, you know, and getting corrections officers that understand the challenge of overtime, you know, because they don't have enough people. So right now, he's asking for a lot of overtime, and it makes the job that much harder. You know, I'm hopeful we're going to get through this, that we will stabilize, and next year's job report on will be very, very different. I hope so. But as I said at the beginning, my inclination is not to go looking to start arguing with any of these properties right now. Yeah, John.
And there's a point of clarification. When you say you excluded the projects that were under construction, you excluded them from the jobs numbers, but not the project values, payment in lieu of taxes, et cetera, right? So the $1 billion with a B in value here includes the projects under construction. And I think, you know, to your point, Rich, that is something that's work that we should really be proud of here, that, you know, billion with a B dollars in new tax base. That's a big number. I don't have at my fingertips what the total valuation is, but you know, I think within the county, that's a, you know, couple of percent at least. You know, it helps. It really, it makes a huge difference. And I mean, you know, we've seen within the city, you know, between, you know, these projects and others in College Town that didn't need abatements because the rent values are so high up there. The valuation went up enough that the tax rate actually declined for a number of years in a row. And I mean, that I don't think that trend has continued. That was like 3 or 4 years, a couple of years ago. But, you know, I think that's a pretty profound statement about seeing the community grow and what it means to the affordability of existing housing units and, you know, other properties and the services that we can afford to provide.
So this IDA really never abates existing taxes. They phase in the new taxes associated with the project. IDAs can abate existing taxes and others do, but this one, to my knowledge, never has, to your credit. I like to give a little bit of an example. The Marriott was a postage stamp piece of land, and they were paying $4,000 a year in property taxes. The Marriott here, just in 1 year, even with their tax incentive, which is phasing in the new property taxes associated with an $18 million assessment, they paid over $274,000 in property taxes last year. $274,000 that you wouldn't have had that hotel not been built there. There was a bus stop and a sidewalk. So, you know.
There's still a bus stop. It's a nicer bus stop than it was. It was a crappy bus stop, and now it's a beautiful bus stop.
Yeah, so, you know, there are stories like that for nearly every one of these projects. You know, it is incremental new tax base and tax dollars to all the taxing jurisdictions.
And Heather, there isn't a column on here right now that says what the existing taxes total were, right? Like we don't actually have that information here. We've got the payments and what it would be if it weren't exempt, but we don't actually have what the base was prior to the project, right?
I'm sure we have it somewhere in our reams of data, but we don't put it on this sheet.
But John, that's a good point.
Yeah, I'd love to see it sometime. Yeah. Like what, you know, because I think that, you know, when we have these discussions about whether or not the tax abatement program is of value to the community, to be able to say like, okay, if we had not done any of these projects, we would have received this many tax dollars, and here's what we actually got. And I think that that's a, you know, I mean, like you just gave one example and it's profound, and I'm sure you add them all up, it's a pretty big number.
It is.
Yeah. Okay. Anything further on the 2021 jobs report.
Do we need to move? I think we actually need to act to like accept
accept
Heather's
this?
recommendation I'll also move.
Okay. Jeff seconds. Any further comments, discussion, questions? All right, I'll call the roll. Shauna?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Faith?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So that's accepted. And thank you, Heather and Ina, for all your work on this. This is a lot of calculation. And it's certainly really useful information. So, okay, let's keep going with our agenda. By the way, we have a budget meeting at 4:30 today. So I think we're fine, but we kind of need to clear out by 4 o'clock so that they can end this meeting and get ready for the next one, just so you know. Next item is the chair's report. I do not have a chair's report, so we can move on from there. If I think of something that I should have told you, I will jump back in, but otherwise, let's go to the staff report.
You do have the quarterly financial report for the end of the second quarter in your packet on page 29. Fees from projects are basically the income and not a lot of expense at the IDA. The biggest expense of the IDA is the annual MOU with contract for services with IAED. So that is that there. And I just wanted to, if anyone hadn't noticed, report that Library Place is a sea of construction workers. They have 12 weeks to do all the wood framing. All of the steel structure is up. I think it was 2 weeks ago they started the wood framing, and their goal is 12 weeks so that they can get the building buttoned up before cold weather sets in. So if you haven't had a chance, go by and peek in the fence, because there's a lot going on inside the fence that you don't really see.
Did notice they were finally moving up. It's great. Heather, I did have a question. If I think there was supposed to be activity at the Chain Works this month with a closing, perhaps. Do you know what the status is?
They are still waiting on a final sign off and approval on something from the State Department of Environmental Conservation. So, we heard September, we heard October, it might be November, but it's state government. It moves at its own pace.
Okay. All right. Anything further? Any questions, John?
What about Blue Vista? Is there any update on that project?
That's the McKinley project over at 401 East State Street in the parking lot. It is currently on pause as a result of rising construction costs and increasing interest rates. I have been told by the developer that they are considering going back to the city for a variance to add an additional story onto the building to make the numbers work a little bit better. I have given them every information that I have about, if the project changes significantly, if there's a 10% increase in cost, 10% increase in units, that they would need to come back to the IDA for some approvals. So I think some of that is driving their decision-making around how many additional units. Right now, they're approved for 321. As you might recall, initially it was 353 units, and they decided to go down to 321. They were looking at up to 373 units. So I wouldn't be surprised if you see that go back to the city's or to the city's zoning board for a variance for another story on the building. And then they may be back here.
Okay.
But, we're starting, I'm hearing it from all of the developers that, the construction costs and the interest rates are just making things a little bit untenable.
Yeah, the interest rate changes have been profound between, say, February and today. You would see mortgage rates for a new development project on about, they would have been about 3%. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see 6 by the end of this month.
I'm seeing
so
5
it's-
1/4 on some
Yeah.
existing projects, 5.3.
Well, and the treasury just spiked and we're hearing 3/4 of a point in September at the Fed rate. So it's, I mean, I think that that's going to continue and that's going to put a lot of stress on these projects, especially combined with the inflationary pressures of building materials and labor. So I think it's only going to get a whole lot harder to do stuff. And that's something that I don't know what exactly we can do, but something that we should be mindful of.
Yeah, we've seen it on the other side at the county's Community Housing Development Fund, which, provides financial support for affordable housing projects that we had, I think 4 projects that had been approved over the past 2 years that are under construction or getting ready to be under construction coming back. And they hadn't asked for the max amount that they could. And they're coming back now and asking to increase their award amounts. And the fund doesn't have any funds right now. So, one of the things that this Cliff Street Retreat project would do is $50,000 into that fund today. It's usually supported at about $400,000 a year between the partners. So, it's a little bit, and every little bit is going to help to make some of those projects remain feasible at this point.
Looking at our financial report, we have a pretty healthy fund balance right now. If that's the critical element in getting affordable housing projects forward in our community, is that an appropriate use of some of our fund balance?
I mean, I think I'd personally, and this is a drum I've been beating for a while here. I'd really like to see us actually have some meaningful conversations about how we can use our fund balance in order to, deliver on some community priorities. And I personally think that the housing affordability issue is one of the biggest problems. I mean, shelter in this community is probably the biggest problem that we have at many different levels. I mean, just in a meeting today, hearing that the homeless shelter is completely full. So there's literally 0 beds available there. And there are lots of folks who need them. And, I think that that's something that's, it traverses many levels that, you open up a 40% AMI unit and that might be a family that's not on the street. So, I think that that's something that I'd like to see us put some meaningful focus on. And I think that it could impact our employers by making it possible for them, them to attract and retain employees that can afford to live in this community, et cetera. How we do it is an interesting question. And, I think that that's something that it'd be good for us to have sort of a broad-based exploration of, and perhaps, maybe even put together a working group to try to generate some ideas as to how we could really make a difference.
Well, I guess I'd like to hear from some of the other board members. Do you think this is something worth having further discussion about?
Definitely. I think I would certainly want us to understand from Russ, what legally can we do? Clearly, I don't know what we can do. I know we had some discussions about what we could do, for Knickerbocker, and there were some limitations on what we could do. So I think that would be a starting point, at least for me, so I can understand what we can do.
Okay.
Yeah, I did. I'll chime in quickly. And again, I apologize for not being there physically. There are limitations on how you can spend your money. But if as John noted, there wants to be an investment by the IDA for affordable housing, that's certainly something that you can do. And how we get that money out, the lawyers can figure that out. You can't loan money, you can't grant money, but we can figure out how to spend it through a project expenditure. So I agree with John and Rich that, this is maybe a committee discussion as to what the goals are and how much money you want to spend, frankly, on these types of projects. And then I can figure out, or my team and I can figure out how to get that money out there to the developers.
Heather?
And Rich, you had asked that you send this discussion to the finance committee, and it is on my list to have a finance committee meeting of the IDA to
Okay, maybe that's,
have further discussion.
Let's-
Does that still seem the appropriate place to
I
do
think
that?
so, but John?
I mean, I'm not sure. So I guess anybody can come to a committee meeting, right? But it seems to me that actually this is not necessary. There's of course a financial impact, but this is more of a question of what is our strategy around how to use our fund balance isn't really like, it's in my mind, like finance and audit is sort of like where you make sure you're accounting for things properly and et cetera, not necessarily making a big picture strategic decision.
Yeah.
We might even want to have a committee of the whole or something like that, because I can't imagine there's anyone in this room who isn't interested in what that big picture strategy might be. I think that it's something that shouldn't happen in our regular meetings just because we just don't have time to get through it. And we might want to, sprint and have a couple of sort of working group sessions on it that are more frequent than these meetings.
That was kind of the question I was asking. Finance, it will be a bunch of us, it's a hat you wear. It's not necessarily you check out from all the other considerations, but we could do it as a committee of the whole. I'd be happy to do that. What's the pleasure? We get to go to more meetings. That's a bonus.
I'm fine with us having a separate committee meeting as a whole. I think I would want us to, before we get that, I would like to request that Russ create some type of memo for us that gives us some ideas about what exactly, I know in general terms, it sounds like what we can do, but I would really like us to understand what we can do for it, and then we can get creative in terms of how we do it.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
Great.
I'm wondering if a month from now, we could just arrive early and have a discussion on this issue before our regular meeting as a committee of the whole.
Sounds good.
Just so I have a sense as to where this may be a premature question. How much money are we talking about investing as a board into these types of projects?
What's our current fund balance?
2.7.
It seems like we shouldn't leave ourselves with no cash, but the majority, I would be inclined to say, $1.5 million, 2.
Wow. I wasn't going to go that high, but given the leverage that the Community Housing Development Fund gets, and maybe we could do some tranches. But
yeah,
that's the discussion to have.
Development Fund. The Community Housing Development Fund is an example of something we might do with it, but we also, IDAs and other communities do things like buy land. We could, for instance, buy a parcel of land and then do like long-term land leases at low rates to developers of affordable housing. So we're not actually taking the risk on the real estate project, but, we're enabling, land costs are a huge barrier to building affordable housing. That's just one, random idea. There are probably a lot of other things we can do that could help. And so, I think it's, that's why I think we should have sort of a broad-based discussion and really take the time to dig in on it.
All right. Well, I guess 1 month from now.
Yeah, one thing I like is I keep thinking of that in Knickerbocker, how all those jobs that came into town. And the more jobs you get like that come in town, but these manufacturing is just huge as far as maybe we wouldn't need as much affordable housing if we got better jobs like that in town, more Borg Warners.
Well, if you want to retain and attract business, I think you need to start investing in graduation space for companies graduating out of the incubators so that they don't move away. If you really want to do business attraction, which we've never done a lot of in Tompkins County, you have to market. You have to probably have a rail line or a rail spur. You might want to have access to a highway. Like we do have some barriers here that, don't make for manufacturing mecca in our community. But there are certainly some things that we could do, particularly to support the high-tech spin-outs that are coming out of Cornell. If anyone saw recently, Rosie was acquired by Instacart and they're staying here. Startup company, Cornell student, built his company here. He could have moved. IAED invested in him early on when the bank would not give him a loan. And part of why he rented his first space on the Commons was because he had a loan from IAED. That's a success story. Yeah. We saw Ithaca Hummus, he grew as quickly and as big as he could grow. And he needed $1 million piece of equipment that he couldn't afford to buy. So his best business decision was to move to a co-packer in Rochester. we're never going to have a 1 million square foot co-packer like Ledestri in Rochester, but there are certainly things that could be done to invest in space and workforce training, even to support retention and expansion of companies. And that's what economic development agencies do.
Yeah, I hate to stop this discussion, but this is what we're going to talk about 1 month from now. And Russ, yes, if you could do a short memo for us, just saying what we could apply fund balance to or not. So
Yes, I promise to keep it under 50 pages, Rich.
Yeah, 50 would be great. Yeah. Okay.
So I'm happy to do it.
Okay, thanks. Before we leave, I know it's more mundane than thinking about how we can really do great stuff, but we have minutes to approve. Could I get a motion on the June 8th minutes? Shauna moves, Mike seconds. Thanks. Any questions, comments on the minutes?
I want to say there was a dig about the Black Oak Wind Farm that didn't make it into the minutes, but maybe we can just leave well enough alone on that.
Okay, according to Robert's Rules of Order, you're going to record not your discussion, but anything you voted on and your approvals.
Well, we didn't vote on that comment, so.
Yeah, we did not. So, all good. Okay, Shauna.
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
John.
Yes.
Jeff.
Yes.
Faith.
Yes.
Todd.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Okay, any other business to come before the Tompkins County Industrial Development Agency? Seeing none, I would consider a show of hands to adjourn. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good rest of the week.